Mist lifts like a breath remembered, rising from the edge of a valley that has no map, a valley that leans against the hush between two heartbeats. The air hums with water that is not entirely water, a current of murmured syllables moving beneath, the skin of silence. It begins like a whisper, brushing the ear with a softness almost too delicate to notice, a silvered surface with no clear light above it, as though the glow were born inside the river, and the river were born inside a dream. The color is the space between moon and dawn, a pearled grey that keeps its secrets. I stand where the earth becomes memory, and memory becomes drift, and I do not ask where the path began. It is enough that it continues. There is a feeling that someone has just spoken my name, and then forgotten it midway through the breath. The echo does not return to me. It sinks into the water and slides along the current, where it is joined by other fragments, petal-thin syllables that brush one another like moth wings. The river gathers them all, and the sound is gentle, a lullaby sown from unfinished words. Every ripple is an eyelid closing. Every curl of light along the surface is a page turning without hands. On the banks lie stones that gleam as if still wet from a rain that occurred centuries ago. They look like torn leaves from a book that would not stay written. Inscriptions, softened until they are less than language and more than mere pattern. I kneel to touch one and feel the temperature of twilight. Threads of warmth and coolness braid together in the stone's skin, as if the heat of a remembered palm still lingers there, while the chill of forgetting keeps it from burning. I cannot read the letters, but their weight presses through the fingertips, traveling up the arm into the chest, and I know in a way that requires no voice. This river does not ask to be solved. It asks to be accompanied. Somewhere in the fog, a bell breathes. Not a strike or a toll, only the shape of a sound, as though a bell were dreaming of itself and letting the dream leak outward. It meets the hum of water, and the two become one. Vibration, a line drawn beneath the sentence of the valley. A willow leans over the shore, brush tips combing the surface. And when the fronds lift, droplets hang a moment in the air like tiny mirrors, each showing a different childhood. A red ribbon slipping from a braid, a cracked window opening to rain, a hand releasing a lantern that floats up instead of away. The droplets burst silently. Their light does not fall, it dissolves into the wider glow. I begin to walk. The ground here behaves the way memory behaves, firm until it remembers that it is softer than it looks. My footfalls make a hushed percussion, as if I were stepping on pages. The path is not a path, only a persuasion of grass and pale sand that seems less to lead forward than to lean forward, inviting my body to follow. The river stays with me, sometimes so near I could brush it with my sleeve, sometimes slipping, away behind veils of mist, then returning with an angle of light. I do not hurry. Silence is a slow animal and will not approach a running hand. As I walk, I begin to sense a second river curled within the first, a deeper current hidden beneath the whispering surface. It moves with a steadier purpose, drawing the faint phrases, down and laying them side by side, like a librarian arranging books on shelves only the dark can see. When the water swells against a curve of stone, I glimpse that lower flow as a dim silver thread. Something like a breath catches in my chest, not fear, not grief, but the ache of recognition. It is the pattern of what I have lost that holds me here, the way a missing stair still shapes the climb. On a sandbar, a line of small glassy shells gleams with the color of old pearls. They are unbroken, but each bears a seam that looks like a healed crack. I pick one up and hold it to my ear, an old gesture, almost a joke. The sound inside is not ocean. It is the soft turning of pages blended with rain just beginning. I hear a chair scrape across a wooden floor, then stop. A laugh rises like steam and disappears as soon as it touches air. I lower the shell and set it with care back into its place, for I feel that the river knows where every object belongs, and I would not tilt its order. Ahead, a pale arch glides out of the fog. It is neither stone nor bone, neither bridge nor gate. It hovers a handspan above the water and quivers with the lightest pulse, the way veins show their rhythm on a sleeping wrist. The river flows through it, as if through a memory of a door. By the time I reach the spot where I thought it would stand, it has moved 3 paces farther, and I smile without showing teeth. Some thresholds prefer to be approached with patience. I walk along until the arch chooses to rest, and when I pass beneath it, the air cools by a degree no instrument would register, and yet the skin along my forearms lifts into small fields of wakefulness. The ground slants gently downward. The river grows more self-assured, as if it has remembered its verb. I come upon stairs that lead nowhere. 4 stone steps arranged near the bank, half sunk in moss. A faint curve of railing remains at one edge. So smooth my fingers slide of their own will. When I place my foot on the lowest step, the moss gives a sigh that is almost a voice, almost a thank you. I stand on the second step, and the river brightens, as though it recognizes the posture of someone about to ask a question. But I do not ask. Not yet. Questions can break if they are filled too soon with waiting. Mist condenses into filaments, hangs in the branches, and then loosens into small drifting strands, drawn toward the surface of the water as iron is drawn to a magnet. Each strand touches the river and unravels into a fine script that never completes a letter. Lines, curls, gentle hooks, all of them half-born and wholly beautiful. They glow for a heartbeat, then are carried down. The urge to follow deepens. My feet fall into the rhythm of the current without entering it, a side-by-side motion, as though the river and I were walking a parallel sentence. A voice, or the idea of a voice, reaches me from downstream. It could be wind, but it holds vowels. It could be the ripple of a submerged log, but it hums on a single note that seems to expand and quiet at once. I taste the metallic sweetness of a memory arriving. A corridor with tall windows filmed with dust, a soft brush of fabric against the back of my hand, a name spoken in the time it takes a moth to change direction. I do not turn around to see who might be there. The dream does not require eyes behind the head to be believed. The river narrows between 2 outcrops of rock. Here the stones are not grey but a pale umber, as if light had been stored inside them for years and was now staining its way to the surface. Narrow ribs of quartz vein their faces, and I can almost read them as lines of music. Slow, slow, pause, slow. At the tightest point of the passage, the water smooths into something like a still sheet of silk being drawn through the hands. No ripple mars its passage. Beneath the silk, the deeper current runs more darkly, and for an instant, I see it full, braided and strong, winding like a spine along which the valley stands upright. A bird passes, a shadow really, shaped like a swallow but larger, perhaps no bird at all, perhaps an old thought given wing. It cuts through the mist, and the wake it leaves is not a disturbance but a brief clarity. Through that clear briefness, I see a child in a doorway, not turning away, not stepping forward, simply holding the outlines of both decisions at once. A bell's breath strokes the air again. I breathe with it. The world grows lighter by a shade, though no sun reveals itself. When the river widens, it does so with courtesy, yielding space to a field of reeds that tilt their heads in unison at the slightest rumour. The tips bear seed that sparks when the fog brushes them, small points of light that do not fall but float there, suspended, as if the air had learned to cradle embers. I move through them, and they part without sound. In the centre of the field stands a single lantern. Its glass is not glass. It is water made to remember the shape of flame. Within that water, light moves in a slow spiral, opening and narrowing like the pupil of an eye. I feel seen, but not judged. The lantern brightens as I draw near, and a path appears across the water, stones rising to meet the sole of my foot just in time, then lowering themselves back into the river as I leave them behind, as if sacrificing their small elevation to preserve my faith in forwardness. On the far side, the bank changes. The ground is made of fine grey sand sprinkled with mica, so that each step leaves behind a faint constellation of shimmer. If one could read star charts, laid downward instead of up, perhaps the sand would tell me where I have been. I walk more slowly now, not from weariness, but from a need to listen with my feet. The river carries fewer fragments of words and more of something else. The tones, the timbres, the colorations of voices without the burdens of their messages. It is as if the alphabet has been folded and put away, leaving behind the breath, the warmth behind the throat, the closeness of the human face leaned toward yours in darkness. I do not notice the bridge until I am beneath it. It hangs there like a thin blade pressed gently against the throat of the fog, not threatening, only demonstrating the idea of a line that could be crossed. Its underside is smooth as a shell's interior. Drops gather along it, swell with the patience of stars, and fall soundless. I lay my palm flat against the bridge's belly and feel a slow vibration that matches the river's hidden current. The structure has no visible supports. It lowers itself by choice, suspends itself by intent. I think, without language gratitude. The bridge answers by doing nothing at all, and I love it for this restraint. Beyond, the river turns. The turn is small, but everything shifts. The scent in the air becomes faintly resinous, like pine warmed by distant summers. The mist thins into tatters. The hum deepens half a note. On the opposite bank, I see a procession of door frames standing without walls. Some are narrow and tall, some wide and short, some so warped by age that they lean against the idea of rightness and request our mercy. Within each frame, fog has gathered into a different density, as if each door were practicing a particular thickness of forgetting. I walk parallel to them, and their shadows slide like quiet companions across the silvered grass. No handle glints, no hinge creaks. If there are rooms beyond these thresholds, they have chosen to remain inside their silence. The river keeps me, and I keep the river. We are a pair of sentences in a language that no longer requires punctuation. The sky, if it can be called sky, lets fall a dust so delicate I do not feel it land. I only feel the increased kindness of the air against the skin. The willows have given way to sycamores, tall and mottled, their trunks like the arms of statues wearing the stories of time as a garment that never quite fits. Bark unfurls in patches, revealing paler wood beneath, as if the trees were shedding the names people once carved into them. I imagine those names tenderly, the absent, the beloved, the merely secret. From a hollow in the bank the size of a cradle, a small ribbon of water slips into the river and becomes indistinguishable in an instant. It carried with it the smell of stone and a faint coldness like moonlight. When I pause, I hear within that ribbon a single syllable repeated. It is not a word I know, yet I know it fully. It says, continue. There is a pulse in my wrist that answers in time. I move again, and the ground offers the dignified agreement of old earth to a traveler who does not speak loudly. A long time passes, or perhaps only a glance. The valley is an hourglass that refuses to measure. The outline of a mountain appears. Beyond the mist, then dissolves into a softer contour, as if someone laid a hand on the world and smoothed its edges. The river gathers speed so modestly that I feel it only in the silence. The pitch of the hum rises one hair's breadth. The breath of the bell grows more frequent. The fragments of reflection on the surface elongate as they glide by. In one, I see a stair that spirals into a sky made of water. In another, a table laid with white plates and one single sprig of rosemary. In another, hands cupping a flame that does not burn. The images touch me and pass. I am not tempted to hold them. The river has taught me already that grasping breaks more often than it preserves. When the first mirror appears, I do not know it is a mirror. It lies across a shallow bend like a slab of polished slate. I kneel, expecting the river's face, but what rises to meet me is neither my reflection nor anything I could name as mine. A woman gazes back, older than I would expect, yet not old. Tired, but with the good tiredness of someone who has made a home for others. Eyes that have measured storms and found them not unworthy. She does not move when I do. She moves when the water moves. Her hand lifts as a small wave slides beneath the surface, and when it falls, I feel a softness in my own palm, as if her fingers had brushed there. I murmur something without realizing it, and the hum of the river gathers my breath and lays it gently among the others. The mirror darkens, brightens, and shows me a room I once left without saying goodbye. The chair by the window is turned at a welcoming angle. The vase on the sill holds 3 branches of something pale and fragrant. A book lies open, face down, as if resting its eyes. I hold my own eyes open and let the image pass into the current. The mirror becomes water again. A dragonfly, if it is a dragonfly, stitches the air with the finest needle I have ever not seen. Its wings make no sound. Their movement is the tiniest wind in the world. I rise and find the path has become nearly level with the river's lip. I could step in with almost no change in height. The urge to wade is the color of dawn behind closed eyelids. I remove my shoes and hold them by their laces, which have become ribbons of mist. The water's edge greets my feet with the formal kindness reserved for ceremonies and goodbyes. It is cool enough to wake every bone and warm enough to bless it. The pebbles under the surface arrange themselves so that no point presses too sharply against the skin. They know somehow where tenderness limits itself. I wade until the hem of my garment drinks the river and grows heavy with the taste of silver. The current slips around my calves like a cat deciding to forgive. Inside the water, the hum becomes fuller, as if I had leaned into a choir. I close my eyes. The syllables that float past touch the skin, not the ear. A mother's hush, a friend's, seeing, a lover's breath when words are no longer of use. I stand as still as standing allows. Time circles like a patient hawk, and then it perches on the quiet branch of my shoulder. When I open my eyes, the mist has changed its garment. It wears translucence now, layered folds through which shapes become suggestions. Downstream, a pale radiance arcs over the water. Not the gate from before, not the blade-thin bridge, but a sweep of light curving from bank to bank. It seems made of the same material as the lantern's spiral, water that has learned how to speak glow. My feet lift from the riverbed of their own accord. I step through the glow as one would pass through a tender memory, careful not to jar its edges. For a breath, the world softens into a single temperature, a single tone. The hum and the bell become one. On the other side, the valley reveals a small, round island set near the middle of the current. A single tree rises from its center, its branches heavy with leaves as thin and translucent as moth wings. Each leaf holds a faint image, the way a window at night holds the room behind it and the darkness outside at once. I cannot read the images all at once, and that is a mercy. I drift closer, the water parting with the dignity of a curtain in a chapel. At the island's edge, stones form a circle as even as a held breath. I step onto the shore and find that the sand there remembers footprints and then forgives them. I sit beneath the tree. The hum of the river is strong here, not loud, but present the way a heartbeat is present inside a wrist. A leaf detaches itself without noise and falls, not downward, but sideways, drifting into my open hand. Within its thinness, the faintest scene unfolds. A hallway bathed in winter light, a pair of boots left neatly by a door, a scarf coiled like a sleeping thing. The scene fades before sorrow can gather, leaving the hand warmer than it was a moment ago. Another leaf trembles, chooses its direction, and lands on my knee. Within it, the river itself glows. But now it is nighttime, and the stars lean so low they drink from the surface. I lift my face. The sky above me is empty of stars, yet a cool brightness touches the skin as if they were there. I exhale. The breath joins the hum and goes on. How long I sit beneath the moth-leafed tree I do not measure. The river measures for me, and it requires no numbers. A slow resolve arrives, the type that steps softly into the room and waits to be noticed. I rise, and as I do, a subtle shift happens inside the sound around me. The bell's breath becomes just slightly more frequent, as if the valley itself were reminding me that moving forward is another way of resting. I step back into the water and feel it welcome me again, not as a stranger returning, but as a page continuing its sentence after a comma. The island recedes behind me, wearing its roundness like a concealed smile. The glow of the archway diminishes into the mist, and in its place, a line of pale stones appears along the left bank, leading toward a darker fold of the valley where the fog gathers more thickly. There is no dread in that darkness. It is the tender dark of a room where someone sleeps, careful, breathing, alive. I follow the stones. They are warm underfoot, as if the day has been storing itself in them for a long time. The river narrows again, and the hum resolves into a tone that feels familiar in the bones. Something I might have heard as an infant, or before that, when the body was a river too. A doorway without walls waits ahead, taller than any tree I have seen here, carved, not carved, formed of light that has decided to stand. It does not block the way. It invites the air to remember what passing means. I pause before it. On the river's surface, a few last fragments of syllable drift by, conjoined now into a phrase that might be a blessing. I cannot hold it with the ear, and that saves it from being broken. The stones along the bank gleam more deeply, as if a lamp were being raised somewhere just beyond the veil. The bell draws a longer breath. I step forward until I can place my palm against the light, and I find that it has temperature, not heat, not cold. The exact warmth of a forehead pressed gently to another in recognition. There is no door to open. The opening is already a part of me. I draw the next breath as if I were drinking, and I let my eyes soften until the world is the texture of kindness. Behind me, the hidden river continues to carry its luminous fragments, folding them into its secret shelves. Before me, the darkness is not an end, but a tender corridor, a place where memory becomes quiet enough to listen to what comes next. I step into it, and the hum steps with me, and the bell takes another patient breath, and the valley holds its silence like a lantern, cupped in steady hands, guiding me toward the deeper current waiting beyond the veil. The world begins with silence, and it is a silence that is not absence, but presence. It lies across the senses like velvet, soft and weighty, smoothing the pulse and dimming the noise that once clung to waking thought. It is the silence of a cathedral before prayer, the silence of snow settling on forgotten ruins, the silence that comes when memory folds its hands and waits. Within this vast stillness, there is the sense of something hidden, something gathering its shape, and it feels as though the entire world is holding its breath. And then beneath it, there comes a murmur, at first faint, as though it were a thought spoken by someone else behind the ribs, but gradually clearer, shaping itself into the sound of water. Yet this is no earthly water. It does not run across soil or stone, nor does it fall from cloud or spring. It flows through the marrow of memory, threading beneath thoughts like a hidden current beneath dream. It glides across landscapes that no longer exist, winding through gardens that crumbled into dust centuries ago, weaving beneath doorways that once stood in homes long vanished. It is the river of remembrance, and it carries with it all that has been seen, all that has been forgotten, and all that still lingers in the shadow of silence. Its banks shimmer faintly in the distance, as if formed of reeds spun from glass. Each reed bends gently, though no wind can be heard, swaying to a rhythm that seems to come from the river itself. Their surfaces catch the faintest traces of light, fractured and scattered into colors so fragile they seem to vanish as soon as they appear. The reeds sigh as they bend, releasing whispers that drift across the water like breath. One might think they speak in voices, yet the sound carries no words, only a presence too soft to name. The water itself is strange, silvery, yet translucent, as though it were spun from the residue of mirrors. droplets rise from its surface without cause, bursting into faint notes like chimes struck beneath the skin of silence. Each note vanishes before the ear can hold it, dissolving into velvet stillness again. And yet, though the sound fades, its presence lingers within the chest like the echo of a dream one cannot fully remember. The river is narrow at first, threading its way like a whisper through the stillness. But as the silence folds wider, the river broadens too, as if it were unrolling its hidden wings. And in that widening, reflections emerge. Faces that never stayed long enough to be known. Moments of laughter that never found their conclusion. Staircases climbed but never descended. All ripple across the surface as fleeting visions. They vanish as soon as the eye lingers, as though the river itself refuses to allow any single memory to be held for too long. To walk beside this river is to step into a corridor of shadow and light. The air carries the texture of fog, yet it does not obscure, it softens. Shapes emerge slowly, as though they must be persuaded into being. Stones gleam with a pale radiance, worn smooth by centuries of touch that never belonged to hands. Lanterns float above the banks, glowing faintly, yet no flame lives inside them. Their light is the memory of light, a glow left behind by candles that burned in another time. Each lantern drifts at its own pace, moving in harmony with the current, though never touching the water. The silence deepens as one continues, though the murmur of the river persists. It feels as though the stillness is not emptiness, but listening. A presence lingers here, not seen, but felt. Each step along the banks is met with the sensation of being watched, not by eyes, but by memory itself. The reeds bend lower as, though bowing, the glassy stems sighing in unison, and the chimes of droplets fall more steadily now, a music without melody, a hymn without beginning or end. The deeper one drifts into this corridor of silence, the more the river reveals its nature. Reflections surface, not just of places and moments, but of selves. A younger hand reaching for something unseen, an older face gazing back with weariness, a figure walking away into fog, never turning, yet familiar enough to ache. The river gathers these selves and releases them again, refusing to let any version remain whole. In this way, it teaches without speaking. Nothing is kept, yet nothing is lost. A bridge emerges from the mist, delicate and trembling as though woven from strands of moonlight. It arches across the river, but dissolves at both ends into the fog, giving no sense of where it begins or where it might lead. Its surface glows faintly, pulsing with the rhythm of the unseen current beneath. One step upon it, and the silence thickens, wrapping like cloth around the body. The sound of the river grows muted, as though it were being heard from inside a dream. The bridge does not promise passage, it promises reflection. Beneath it, the water stills into a perfect mirror, and in that mirror, the listener sees not the body standing here, but the shadow of someone who has been waiting. The shadow lifts a hand, and though the reflection moves, it is not a mirror's. Mimicry. It gestures softly, beckoning inward, inviting surrender. But just as the moment swells, the reflection fragments, rippling outward, until it is no more than silver dust scattered across the current. The bridge trembles, then steadies again, as though it too is caught between memory and silence. On the far side, the river widens into a vast basin, still and luminous. The reeds of glass here grow taller, their stems glowing faintly from within. Each reed carrying in its body a faint thread of light. When they bend, those threads slide along their length, pooling at the tips like liquid fireflies before vanishing into the mist. The sound here is fuller, though still soft. The droplets now ring in chords, faint harmonies woven through silence. It is as though the air itself has learned to sing with the water. The basin reflects a sky that cannot be seen above. Stars not present in this world, but remembered by another. They drift slowly across the surface, shimmering faintly, sometimes, bending into constellations that dissolve before they are complete. The river here feels infinite, a sea without horizon. And yet the sense remains that this is still only one stream among countless others, threading their way through the unseen labyrinth of memory. To stand at this basin is to feel the gravity of all that has ever passed. Every forgotten dream, every silenced voice, every laugh that dissolved before morning, all of it flows here. The silence is thick with it, velvet pressed against the heart, urging stillness, urging surrender. It is not a command, but an invitation to drift deeper, to follow where the river bends into darkness. And there, just at the farthest reach of vision, a light glimmers, not bright, but steady, a small arch glowing as though carved from the river's own luminescence. It waits beyond the basin, veiled in mist, its presence quiet yet undeniable. It is the promise of the next passage, the threshold leading further into silence, further into memory. The reeds bend toward it as if in reverence, and the droplets fall in rhythms that lean toward its glow. The listener moves forward, each step carrying the weight of both forgetting and remembering. The basin fades behind into silence, and the river narrows once again, carrying with it the whispers of all that has passed. Ahead, the light deepens, shaping itself into the outline of a door without handle, without hinge, waiting with the patience of eternity. And with the next breath, the dream continues, carrying the soul into the hush of the unseen. There is a hush, like falling snow, though no snow has touched this place. It is not the hush of absence, but of presence, of something vast and unspoken pressing gently against the edges of perception. The air itself carries a weightless shimmer, filled with luminous dust that drifts as if time had slowed to the rhythm of a single breath. These motes hang in the air like tiny constellations, swaying as if balanced on invisible threads, glowing faintly with a silver-blue fire. They resemble embers, yet they burn without heat, suspended in a night without horizon. Beneath this soft veil lies the hidden river. At first, it appears not as water, but as a thought stretched wide across the earth's memory. Its surface is so still that it seems carved from polished glass, reflecting the dust in an infinite scattering of stars. Only when the air trembles with the faintest touch does the river move, its stillness loosening into ripples that carry with them secrets too fragile to last. Each ripple is born with a voice, though the voices are never whole. They come as whispers of laughter, so brief they ache, fragments of lullabies sung by unseen lips, tones of grief softened until sorrow itself seems to dissolve into light. The river gathers them all, and each note dissolves before it can be remembered, as if the act of holding would break it. The air around the river carries its own pulse. When the luminous dust drifts downward and touches the surface, it does not sink, but spreads into pale circles of light, widening and widening until they vanish at the edges of sight. Each circle feels like a memory releasing itself, a secret loosening from the chest of time. The hush is complete, yet within it there is movement, a rhythm like breathing, a rhythm that belongs not to lungs, but to the dream itself. To stand at the bank is to feel the river's silence inside the body, as if every forgotten echo is being carried just beneath the skin. My feet press softly into the ground, and even the earth here feels uncertain, like a page being written upon with invisible ink. Each step leaves no trace, as though the land itself is made of recollection, unsteady and fleeting. I reach toward the surface, and the water, if it can be called water, meets me with the coolness of shadow and the warmth of a hand once held. The current accepts without resistance, sliding around my fingers with the tenderness of recognition. And there, as the touch deepens, images rise, not clear, not fixed, but trembling forms that shimmer in the veil. A child's laughter echoes, faint and hollow as though sung into a cavern. A lullaby hums low, its words broken, but the melody clings with the gentleness of a mother unseen. Then grief, soft and patient, passes through the current like a shadow of bells tolling far away. It is not sorrow that demands attention, It is sorrow that has already been lived, its sharpness worn down by centuries of silence. The river does not keep these things, it carries them. And yet, for a breath, they cling to the one who listens, like threads brushed across the face in the dark. The luminous dust thickens, gathering into streams that curl and twine above the water. They form arches in the air, doorways that seem to lead deeper into the night. Each arch glows faintly, its outline trembling as if uncertain of its own existence. The river bends beneath them, carrying its whispered fragments through these shifting portals. To follow is not to walk but to drift, for the land has dissolved into vapor. The ground fades with each step until only the water remains. Water that is more thought than liquid. Water that remembers more than it forgets. The hush grows deeper. It folds around me like a cloak, velvet and absolute, yet never suffocating. Within it, the sound of the river grows louder, though not in volume, but in intimacy. It feels closer, inside the ear, inside the pulse, as though the current itself were flowing through my veins. I cannot tell where the river ends and where the self begins, and perhaps there is no difference. Perhaps the river is only memory, and memory is only the river, each flowing endlessly through the other. In the distance, pale figures gather along the shore. They are not people, not shapes of flesh, but outlines of presence, silhouettes, drawn in starlight and smoke. They move with slow grace, bending toward the river as though listening. Each time a fragment of sound rises, a laugh, a lullaby, a sigh, they lean closer, as though catching the thread before it dissolves. They never speak, yet their silence carries weight, like watchers who know that every sound here must be honored before it vanishes. I feel no fear of them, only the recognition of companions who belong to the same endless passage. The river swells wider. Its surface no longer mirrors the dust above, but begins to hold its own light, as though the depths themselves are remembering. Shapes glow beneath the surface, staircases twisting downward, bells swinging without sound, doors half open yet leading nowhere. They drift past like relics of forgotten dreams, each too strange to belong to the waking world, yet too tender to be dismissed. One door floats upward, its frame glowing with pale gold, and just as it seems it might open, it dissolves back into the current, leaving behind only the ache of wonder. I continue along the bank, though there is no path to mark my way. The hush follows, the luminous dust settling upon my shoulders like a second skin. My breath slows, matching the rhythm of the current, and for a moment I feel as though I too am dissolving. My thoughts scatter into fragments, the echo of a song I once knew, the warmth of a window's light against a winter night, the sound of a name spoken with love. Each fragment passes into the river, taken gently, held for a heartbeat, then released into the infinite drift. As I move, the luminous arches above grow brighter, their trembling edges steadying into form. They stand in a line now, one after the other, stretching into the mist like a corridor of light. The river flows through them, carrying its whispers deeper into the unknown. The figures of starlight stand beside the arches, bowing as each fragment of sound passes, as though acknowledging the passage of memory into the greater silence. The hush is total, and yet within it, every movement, every shimmer, every breath feels like a sacred ceremony. The corridor of arches narrows, and the river draws me forward. Each step feels less like walking and more like surrender. The arches hum faintly as I pass beneath them, vibrating with tones that are too low for the ear but heavy in the bones. The sound is not music, yet it carries harmony. The way silence itself harmonizes with what has been lost. I follow until the arches dissolve into mist, and the river narrows once again, slipping into shadow. Ahead, the luminous dust thins, fading into a darker stillness. The river glows faintly, as though lit from within by embers buried deep. The hush remains, but now it carries a weight, as though the silence itself is preparing for revelation. At the farthest edge of vision, a single light flickers. It is not an ember, not a star, but the suggestion of a flame, small and steady, waiting at the mouth of the next passage. The river bends toward it, and I feel the pull, gentle and certain. And in that moment, as the hush deepens, I know the journey is not ending but turning. What lies ahead is not silence alone, but the next unfolding, a threshold of light waiting to be crossed, a deeper current where memory and dream will entwine again. I drift toward it, and the luminous dust follows, and the hidden river carries me onward into the waiting glow. At the edge of a forest where the trees grow without leaves, there runs a river unseen by waking eyes. Branches rise like open hands, bare and luminous, their pale bark veined with faint silver, as if moonlight had been braided into the wood. The trunks lean toward one another with the intimacy of old confidences, forming arches the wind can pass through without touching. Between them, the ground holds a low breath, and the quiet gathers into a presence that is not empty at all. I step from the last line of root-webbed soil and feel the change as surely as a candle feels the moment a flame lowers its head. The air cools, sound thins, and a slow current of something more than water reveals itself by the way it alters. The hush. The river is not made of water alone. It is the slow confluence of light, shadow, and memory, fused into liquid form and set moving by a will that cannot be hurried. In one place, it shows itself as a ribbon of dusk that gleams from within. In another, as a path of ash-blue radiance sliding over dark stones. And in another, as a darker mirror that holds the shape of things that have passed by. The current is unhurried, and yet, the nearer I stand, the more I feel its pull. No hand can resist it, no heart entirely wishes to. The invitation is older than my name. Around it lies a silence so complete that even my breathing becomes a distant thing, like a shore heard from across a lake. I do not speak. I let the quiet take root. The surface breaks into slow ripples, waves as soft as a sigh loosed from a dream. They carry fragments of song, as leaves might carry light. Verses sung once in childhood arrive without faces, and yet unmistakable in their tenderness. A melody that turned a room into safety, a line that was always forgotten and always forgiven. Prayers whispered in secret arrive next, not with the urgency that once tied them to a moment, but with the gentle weight of intentions that have survived their occasions. And then farewells never spoken aloud come through like shadows of bells, their tones full but muted, with room left inside, them for what went unsaid. The river receives everything without dividing it, braiding sound into motion until the music and the water keep time as one. I step closer. The bank here is a pale shelf of stone, patterned with lines of mica that give back the light in soft sparks, as if the rock itself remembered stars. The stone is warm as a wrist, cool as a window pane at evening, both at once. Beneath it, the river shows its layered body, a bright film near the surface that gathers the luminous dust of the air. A middle stratum like smoked glass where shadows pass like fish, and a deeper channel that is almost black, except where something wakes inside it and draws the eye with a pulse of low glow. Each layer moves with its own patience, yet all keep the river's wide cadence. I kneel, and the silence kneels with me. Touch is enough to change the world here. The barest tip of a finger against the surface and the river's thought opens like a book to the right page. The water is neither cold nor warm, but exact, the temperature of a remembered forehead. Press gently to another. Where my skin meets the current, the slow ripples gather and briefly sharpen as if to speak. A single syllable forms, then breaks, then reforms as breath. I do not try to hold it. I have learned not to chase the deer of names where the trees stand without leaves. Across the current, a line of stones appears, half submerged, like vertebrae of some sleeping thing. Between them, reeds of glass grow. Each reed bends and sighs in a wind that carries no sound. Each gives a tiniest shiver, like the ring left in a bell after the tone has gone on. Droplets rise from the river in perfect circles that bloom outward and dissolve at the edges of sight, each circle carrying an unkept promise into a wider calm. The reeds tremble when a fragment of song passes. Their trembling is precise, and in that precision, the air learns to remember. The forest leans nearer. The leafless branches lace together overhead, threading a vaulted ceiling out of absence. The sky beyond is neither day nor night. It keeps a silver that belongs to both. Shadows have edges and also soft dissolves. They belong to things and also to nothing. I move along the bank toward where the river curves, and the path is made of powder-fine soil that holds no print. If someone were to follow, they would follow the sound of a foot through silence, not marks. Yet even that sound washes away as quickly as a thought released. A child's voice rises from the current and becomes 3 notes of laughter that stop just before the 4th. The way someone stops themselves at the threshold of joy because the room on the other side might be empty. A lullaby follows with its threadbare comfort. The thin edge of a melody patched and repatched through years of use, stronger for the mending. Then a farewell, simple as the closing of a book left open too long, slides by with a finality softened by distance. I feel each pass through me and go on. Nothing catches, nothing sticks, nothing is refused. At a narrowing in the river, a structure grows out of the mist, a bridge so thin it looks drawn by the point of a needle. It spans from one bare-rooted bank to the other and vanishes into the pale trunks on both sides. Its railing, if that is what it is a braid of light, the color of pewter and rain. The bridge offers no promise of arrival, only of crossing. Beneath it, the river grows glass still, and what lies in its depth becomes legible, not as objects, not as scenes, but as textures of feeling. Coarse grief, fine wonder, the woven cloth of contentment, the torn edge of regret. They shift and reorder as if responding to a slow loom that only memory knows how to operate. I step onto the bridge. It has no weight. I am the only weight it knows. The instant my foot finds it, a low tone rises, a note so deep the ear cannot wear it, but the body does. It steadies the breath. It gathers the stray threads of thought and lays them side by side. The bare trees lift their arms higher. On the water a face appears, a reflection, and not mine alone. It wears traces of ages I have not yet come to, and the softness of mornings I have already left behind. It is a companion more than a mirror, and it looks at me with an attention that holds and forgives and never asks. When I reach the center, the bridge loosens the knot it made of me and sets me down on the far side without the formality of steps. The bank there is narrower, the stone darker, veined with the faintest blue. Someone has left offerings I cannot entirely see. The suggestion of folded cloth, the outline of a small bell without a clapper, a key whose teeth have been smoothed by being carried too long in a pocket. I do not take them. I do not know how to carry anything here except breath and the willingness to let breath go. The river spreads into a pool so still, the luminous dust above it seems to pause in mid-air. In the pool's center, an island no larger than a table rises, set with a circular ring of stones. Each stone bears an inscription too pale to read and too present to ignore. The ring is incomplete by one stone-sized gap, not an absence but a space being held for something not yet arrived. The current eddies around the island and moves on, unoffended. I sit at the edge of the pool and watch the way the light gathers, at certain seams in the water, as if listening. A door opens in the mind, not in the world. I find myself standing in the threshold of a winter room. It is not this forest, not this river. A window looks out onto a yard of blue snow that remembers footsteps and then forgives them. On the sill, a sprig of evergreen dries in a thin glass. Behind it, the endless whiteness of the field is broken only by a line of fence posts leaning together like weary travelers. The room holds a chair, a book open and face down, a shawl folded with the kindness of hands. There is a breath in the air that is almost a person and almost an echo. I blink, and the room becomes the pool again, its surface unbroken. I rise and walk. The pool constricts into a canal whose edges are cut from the same blue-veined stone. Arches pass overhead, their inner faces slick with pale light, their outer faces shadowed as if coated with ash. Between the arches, the trees of the leafless forest stand in precise rows and then abandon precision and become a thicket. The rhythm is a lull and a quickening, a lull and a quickening, like the river's pulse borrowing its timing from the heart. In the water, long threads of brightness drift with their own grace, and where they brush the banks they leave behind a residue like frost that never melts. A song distinct from the fragments rises, threaded and whole. It is not a melody I know, but I feel where it would place a hand on the shoulder, where it would loosen a fist, where it would look up through a window at a night softening into nearly morning. The canal bends, and the sound doesn't. It keeps going the way a voice keeps going when the person who made it is no longer there to speak. I follow until the canal broadens again, and the forest opens upon a long colonnade of trees that might once have been a road. Here the ground is paved in pale slabs whose edges have worn into gentle curves. At each join a thin stream of light, leaks upward like breath. The river runs alongside and then across, and then along again, as if it were deciding which side of the journey it prefers. In the middle of the colonnade, a bell hangs from nothing. It turns slowly, catching the dust. When it swings, silence swings with it, and the world harmonizes a fraction tighter. I do not hear it strike, and yet the instant it passes the lowest, arc, the skin along my forearms brightens with the sense of a tone. At the far end of the colonnade, a door stands alone. It is made of darkness condensed until it holds form. A thin seam of light surrounds it the way dew surrounds a leaf at dawn. It has a handle that is also a shadow of a handle. It need not open. It is opening. I stand before it long enough to know I am not ready, and also long enough to feel that readiness is not the point. The river runs by, unjudging, and carries past the words I am not saying. Stay. Go. Again. Enough. I place my palm where the door's heart would be if doors had hearts, and a coolness steadies me from the inside out. Then I step back, not away, just back, and return to the river's edge. From here the current looks wider, more sure of its depth. The leafless trees thin, and the land beyond them drops into a valley of low fog. Over that fog, the light holds its own weather. Small drifting lamps that do not burn, only glow because they remember. The river draws them down gently when they hover too long, folds them into the surface like sleeping birds into the cover of a reed bed. More fragments of song arrive, the older kind that people hum when they do not know they are singing. Workday, songs for hands, cradle songs for shoulders, a hum for sweeping a floor, and a hum for leaning on the threshold and watching rain explain patience to a street. I speak one word, and the forest listens as if the word were a bird settling onto a branch. The word is not important, the listening is. I speak another, softer still, a name I am surprised to hear because it belongs to someone who left quietly through a summer door. The river answers not with an echo, but with an acceptance. It gives the word a place to stand, and then releases it to stand wherever it pleases. There is kindness in that letting go that feels like a hand smoothing a blanket over someone half asleep. We come, the river and I, to a reach where the banks are made of carved stairs. Each step is shallow enough for a tired person, wide enough for a child who doesn't know where to put their feet. On one riser, a line of script has survived that the water hasn't taken. I cannot read it, yet the meaning arrives. You who arrive gently. I descend to the lowest step and sit with my legs in the current. The river draws lines around my calves the way a cartographer traces a coast. It is mapping me without taking anything, and I am grateful. The sun, if there is one, does not rise. It reveals itself by deciding to be present inside everything. The bare branches take on a faint blush at their tips, like the hint of leaves not yet born. The stones deepen in color the way a vow deepens when it is kept. In the water, darker shapes begin to stand out. Passages, alcoves, turns, until I can see that the river is a library whose shelves are in motion. Volumes pass by with blank spines that I know are not blank at all. Some slow as if to be chosen, some place themselves back in the flow. The librarian is everywhere and nowhere. Order hums, but so softly it might be love. A path of pale boards leads across a shallow. Each board floats and yet holds. I walk them the way one walks a sentence that asks to be spoken without rushing. Across the shallow, the forest changes again. The trunks expand, their pale bark opening in patches like islands in a winter sea. In those patches I see, not wood, but windows, a garden after rain, a bed just risen from, a spoon left on a counter with a drop of honey that will crystallize into amber if no one returns. Places of small mercy, each set at the height of a passing gaze. The river mirrors them all and adds its own light, which moves like a benediction that has no speaker but knows precisely what to bless. I notice then that my hands have become quieter than they were. They hang at my sides, not empty but unrequired. The breath in my chest has lengthened, and the edges of the world have softened into a readiness that does not demand. I walk more slowly because the walking itself is the point. When grief rises, it does so the way mist rises off water warmed by morning. It appears. It reveals what it covers by the way it thins. It goes. The songs coming now are fewer, but each is fuller, as if the river has decided that depth is better than number. At a bend where the ground drops sharply, the river gathers itself into a dark, clear throat. It does not fall. It continues. But the sense of a threshold is unmistakable, and the air ahead carries a taste like the inside of a bell. The leafless trees cluster more closely here, their branches entwining until they make a lattice with a single high arch in the center. Through that arch, the current passes and narrows to uncertainty. The light hesitates and then commits. I stand with one hand on the bark of a tree that is cool as a ceramic bowl and let the scene arrive inside me. Farewells never spoken aloud, move past in their purest form. Neither speeches nor scenes, just the quiet exactness of the moment before, someone turned, and the moment after. They are tender without being gentle, sharp without being cruel, complete without having been finished. The river receives them with the skilled hands of a midwife, turning them so they can enter the wide waters that need them. The hush thickens one last time, then lifts like the hem of a curtain taken up by night. When I step beneath the lattice of branches, the world alters not by degree but by attention. The silence becomes a choir made of one note. The river's surface darkens until it can hold stars, and then it does. Not the stars above this place, but the stars that have ever been wished upon from any window anywhere. Their reflections take the shape of questions and then dissolve into invitations. Ahead, a soft doorway of light forms where the current squeezes between two shoulders of stone. It is no larger than a lantern held at the far end of a hallway. It is exactly the size of hope when spoken quietly. I move toward it. The ground is a language I do not need to translate. The river walks with me the way a friend walks with a friend when the words are finished, and the meaning remains. Behind me, the forest without leaves holds its breath with elegance. Above me, the sky's silver draws one fine line across the dome of the world, the way an instrument bow draws a line across a string. In front of me, the doorway gathers its light. When I arrive at the threshold, the current pauses in a way only hearts and rivers can. The songs fall silent. The prayers rest their foreheads on the stones. The farewells fold their hands. I do not reach for the door. It does not require reaching. I let my attention widen until the doorway stands both outside and inside me, both in front of my eyes and behind them. The river eases forward, and I ease with it, and the light of the passage lays itself across my face like a promise that asks nothing in return. The last thing I see before I go on is the simple, faithful architecture of the world I am leaving. For a while, the bare trunks holding up the tender vault, the mica lines in the stone reminding me how to catch a spark, the bell that never needed to ring in order to be heard. The last thing I hear is the smallest note the river can make, the sound of something letting go without falling. Then the light of the new passage opens like a quiet mouth, and I breathe in, and the forest of leafless trees tilts towards sleep behind me, and the water of light and shadow and memory gathers me gently into the deeper current waiting beyond. A single drop falls into stillness, and from that simple act, the world remembers its shape. It is not a fall so much as a yielding, a soft surrender of light into dark, of sound into silence. The drop touches a surface that seems like polished night, and upon it a circle opens, large as a breath, and then larger than any memory. From that widening, a river expands that has always been here, not newly born, but newly seen, the way constellations appear when the eyelids lift. Its waters glisten like ink spilled across parchment, the kind of ink that climbs the fibers and refuses to dry, ink that carries stories too faint to read and yet too heavy to forget. The river unrolls its velvet body through the hush, and the hush accepts it without surprise, as if the two were old companions who never needed to speak. Along the shore, willows bow as though listening. Their slender leaves are pale as whispers, and when the branches trail into the current, they stir a sibilant murmur, the sound a book makes when a thumb skims its edges. The willows lean not from wind, but from attention. They lean the way a person leans toward a name they have not heard in years, just to be certain. Each branch trails deeper, gathering what the water carries. Forgotten words curled like shells, half letters, fragments of vows, the soft remains of lullabies the night refused to surrender. When a leaf lifts, beads of river cling a moment to its edge, then let go in a string of tiny lights. Each a held breath returned. The silence here is deep. It is not empty. It is patient. Within it pulses the faintest rhythm, like a heart hidden beneath centuries of sleep. It does not announce itself. It keeps time the way roots keep time, low and steady, a persistence beneath the visible. I walk beside the flow and feel shadows lengthen without source, stretching long across the water until they vanish in the gloss of its depths. They are not ominous. They are the day laying itself down, the kind of shadow that remembers the body but does not require it. My own shadow joins them, thins, dissolves, and for a moment I cannot tell if I am the one moving beside the river or if the river is the one moving within me. The ground is soft with a fine, silvery silt that gives way and then restores itself. Each step leaves a suggestion, a short-lived sentence the river edits as I pass. Stones are scattered like punctuation, commas where the current pauses, dashes where it quickens, ellipses where the water slows to think. On one stone, smooth as a worn word, a filigree of lichen glows in a muted green, like ink washed thin by rain. I touch it, and a coolness travels up the arm and eases the breath. The river answers with a ripple that does not move forward so much as deepen, like a thought deciding to stay. Farther on, the willows part to reveal an open stretch of bank where the water spreads into a dark mirror. The surface reflects a sky without edges. In it, the earliest stars are ideas rather than lights, trembling within the ink as if the river were remembering the first night it ever saw. I kneel and watch as a line of words uncoils along the reflection, written in a script I almost know. I lean closer. The words are made of shadow rather than light, un-ink that writes by taking away. When I try to read them, the letters soften and drift apart like pollen, each grain luminous, each grain a syllable, of a language I once spoke before, language learned to be difficult. I exhale, and the words dissolve. The river accepts them back. The willows whisper again. Their branches trace gentle circles, and in those circles I see small images rise, no more than thumbnail size, moments too slight to be scenes. A cup placed, carefully upside down to dry. A window opened to hear the rain more clearly. A child's hand resting, palm up, on a tabletop, as if receiving a coin of light. These are the coins the river carries. They are worth more than their brightness, more than their shape. They have the density of tenderness. When they drift beneath the surface, they leave a tremor that the willows follow with their fingers. Like reading Braille written in water, it is a night of softened edges. Even the stones seem to have loosened their definitions, growing rounder as the minutes pass, as if time itself were a river wearing everything toward kindness. I walk until the path curves inward, and there, cradled by the bend, an altar of driftwood has arranged itself. Not built, not placed, arranged the way sleep arranges blankets across a sleeping body. Upon it rests a single bell with no tongue, a coil of twine that remembers binding but is not bound, and a paper boat folded from a page whose text is unreadable in this light. The boat has never known water. It waits with the patience of a thought that will be thought when it is ready. I consider setting it afloat, then lay my hand near it and feel the river's rhythm through the wood. The boat belongs to a later hush. I let it be. When the river narrows, it does so with ceremony. Two banks draw close like elders meeting in a long hallway, their willows bending until their tips touch and lace. The tunnel this creates is green-grey and breathing. The ink water glides beneath like a laid ribbon. My shoulders lower, my pace deepens. The faint heartbeat in the silence matches the footfall, a soft double beat. Water and step, water and step. In this tunnel, the shadows gather into more deliberate forms. Doors without hinges, a staircase submerged just enough that its steps are rumors. A lamp that is only the memory of being lit. They move beneath the surface the way fish move in sleep. Slow, purposeful, dreaming. At the tunnel's center, a single droplet climbs out of the river, as if remembering the first drop that began all of this. It hangs from the tip of a willow leaf, large as a tear and bright as a small moon. Inside it, an entire room appears. A desk with a bowl of ink, a chair turned slightly away, a hand halfway between writing and resting. The droplet trembles, and the room's walls ripple like fabric in a low wind. I lift a finger to steady nothing, and the droplet falls back to the river with a sound so soft it happens inside the breath rather than outside it. The room returns to the ink it came from, and the tunnel opens into a wider world. Here the bank becomes a long terrace of slate, with shallow steps descending to the water in easy intervals. Each step bears a line of script carved so finely, the letters are more suggestion than mark. I sit on the third step and let my feet enter the river's cool. The ink dark becomes lighter where my ankles divide it, pale veins streaming past in lines that sketch and vanish. A fish glides by, or perhaps it is a line of text pretending to be a fish. The river is comfortable with such disguises. It carries what it needs to carry in the shapes that will not startle the onlooker. That courtesy is one of its strengths. Voices arrive. Not words at first, not sentences, but the timbre of human sound. Their distinct contours without their contents. The rounded edge of a laugh, the steady rope of a prayer, the hollow glass of a farewell caught in the throat. They braid, then separate, then braid again, as if remembering their original weave. I close my eyes. Behind the eyelids, the river is brighter. Ink turns to obsidian, obsidian to mirror. The mirror turns itself around and looks at me. It is gentle. It does not ask what I cannot give. It shows what I can bear. I stand, and the steps become a causeway leading out across a shallow. Stones lift their heads just enough to admit the foot, then sink back into the current behind me. The causeway leads to a small island where the willows make a circle and leave the center clear. In the clearing, a table of stone offers its calm surface. On it lies a ribbon of parchment unrolling by itself, as if at last given permission. It stretches to the edge and does not fall. The words on it are legible now. They read the way water reads the shore, line by line, never quite finishing, always enough. As my eyes pass along them, the letters lift as moths and settle again. What they say cannot be repeated aloud, not because it is forbidden, but because it is exactly sized to this quiet. It would crumble in the daytime mouth. I bow my head a little, a reflex rather than a decision, and feel something inside bow too. When I leave the island, the willows lift their branches, and the ink on my skin evaporates into a coolness. The river grows deeper, though the surface remains flat as thought. The faint heartbeat in the silence comes nearer to the ears. It beats in the roots of the willows. It beats in the stones. It beats in the segments of dark between stars. It beats in the place where a hand would be held if a hand were there. As it deepens, shadows that had been content to lengthen now begin to say what they are. One arrives as a doorway laid flat upon the river, framing nothing but depth. Another lifts as a stair that does not climb. It recedes. Another firms into a bridge whose far side cannot be seen because distance has folded over it like cloth. I choose none. I let them pass. The river honors restraint with revelations of its own timing. I come to a cove where the current spirals gently, drawing leaves into a small clockwise meditation. The willows here are older, their trunks split and rejoined, their bark silked by time. Hanging from one of the branches is a wind chime made from the hollow stems of last year's reeds. No wind triggers it. The river does. Each time a syllable drifts beneath, the chime gives a single note, thin as a thread and golden as a scarf in lamplight. The notes are spaced so widely that the air between them turns to velvet. I stand and let the spaces teach me. When the next note comes, I can feel where it will settle even before it arrives. The anticipation is part of the music. From the cove, a path of pale boards extends across a marshy reach, and the inkwater becomes a woven tapestry of channels. Little rills break off from the main body, searching among grasses for old stories, reclaimed by silt. Each rill returns with what it has found. One returns with the shape of a key, one with the shadow of a lamp, one with the echo of a voice saying the word now, as if it were a prayer. The boards flex and float, never quite, losing their calm. I cross with the ease of someone who has learned to walk upon sentences. As the marsh gives way to open bank, I find a place where the river touches rock worn into a natural lectern. On that stone, a mirror lies face up to the night. But the mirror is not glass. It is river, captured for a moment in the shape that catches. When I lean over it, I see not my face, but a collection of gestures my face has made. The tilt of the head when listening, the press of lips when swallowing light, the widened eyes at the door that opened from nothing. Those gestures belong to many faces, not just mine, and they look back without urgency. I dip a hand into the mirror and leave no mark that anyone else would see, but the river sees. It keeps everything it does, not keep. Somewhere past midnight, if midnight exists here, a faint color enters the ink. It is the blue of paper in a drawer that has not been opened for years. It is the green of glass at the bottom of a lake. It rides the surface in long strokes and then dives like a fish, the after image of its passage lingering the way a handprint lingers on a window in winter. The willows follow it with their leaf tips. The chime gives two notes close together. I realize I have been waiting for that interval without knowing it. The heartbeat in the silence shifts its emphasis from one chamber to another. The river feels closer to speaking and no more inclined to use words. When the bank rises, it does so to present a set of low arches carved out of the stone. Through each arch, a smaller stream slips, quick and bright, like children weaving through the legs of a crowd. I choose the central arch and pass beneath, the cool stone a blessing across the shoulders. On the other side, the world opens to a broad, slow reach where the ink river reflects a sky filling with very early light. It is not dawn yet. It is the decision to dawn. That decision writes itself along the water as a softening of black to charcoal, of charcoal to smoke, of smoke to pearl. The stories in the ink do not fade. They float closer to the surface where reading becomes less like deciphering and more like remembering. Along this reach, the willows step back as if making room. In their place, a line of low lamps stands at intervals, each a glass vessel filled with the same river light, each with a wick that glows without flame. They do not guide, they witness. Between them, a figure might walk. I do, and the lamps offer me nothing but companionship. The shadows lengthen here too, though the light has not yet climbed. Shadows lengthen because time is stretching so that sleep can fill it. I feel larger in the gentlest way, as if the body had been given permission to become the room around it. The sound changes. The chime grows rarer, the reeds quieter, the willows more still. The river's own voice takes the foreground. It is not the rush of water, nor the babble of a brook. It is the sound of ink deciding where to pool and where to thin. It is the sound of paper absorbing what it can hold. It is the murmur of a quill lifted from the page, hovering before the next line begins. That hovering stretches until it becomes an atmosphere. Inside it, farewell turns to blessing mid-flight. Inside it, the heart beneath centuries of sleep opens an eyelid and looks out without alarm. I realize I have come to a place prepared for a small ceremony. Not a ceremony of arrival or departure, but of continuation. The bank smooths into a clean shelf, and on it rests a single bowl made of dark clay. It is filled with water from the river, except that the water does not move. It holds perfectly, still, a captured sky waiting to be released. Beside the bowl lies the paper boat from earlier, or its twin, folded with the exactness of affection. I lift it gently, the way one lifts a thought that has finally found its words. I place it in the bowl, and it floats, and in floating it remembers every current it has not yet sailed. The ink of the river answers. A thread of darkness leaves the main flow, crosses the small shelf as if it had always known how to walk, and pours itself in a quiet stream into the bowl. The water there deepens by a shade. The boat turns once, twice, and then holds its bow toward the river as if bowing. I carry the bowl to the edge and tip it with the smallest encouragement. The boat slides onto the river and is taken, not swallowed, not rushed, received. The willows bow in their precise way. The lamps keep witness. The heartbeat in the silence aligns with the stroke of a tiny hull that is not a hull. It is a gentle thing, this letting go. It teaches me without insisting. The shadows that once lengthened vanish into depth again, not lost, but kept where light and ink negotiate their tender treaty. The river rolls its gloss along the bank and lays it down like satin. The willows rise from their listening and rearrange the hush so that its folds warm the ground. My steps take on the quality of closing pages, one by one, a story not ending, but finding its place on a shelf where other stories make a space for it. Ahead, the river bends around a promontory of pale stone. The bend hides what comes next, and that hiding is kind. On the face of the promontory, a door has been drawn, not cut, a rectangle outlined in charcoal, a hint of handle ghosted in silver. It cannot be opened by hand because it is not closed by hinge. It exists to say, beyond. The ink water brushes its base, and the drawn handle brightens, then dims, brightens, then dims, like a breath seen from inside. I stop a small distance away and feel the decision of dawn lean nearer. The first bird does not sing, it breathes. That breath touches the willows and the lamps in the river and the clay bowl empty on the shelf. It touches the paper that has not yet been folded into a second boat. It touches the quiet mouth of the drawn door. In that breath, the river's ink softens toward a color that can be written in daylight. The stories do not scatter, they relax. They let themselves be carried forward without clinging to the shore of what has already been spoken. I step with the river as it turns, and the promontory turns with me, revealing a corridor of light so pale it seems carved from mist. At its far end, something glows in the shape of a bell. No clapper, no strike, only the tender outline of a tone waiting to be heard. The willows recede as if giving the ear more room. The heartbeat in the silence opens its hand. The paper boat, far ahead now, finds the light and becomes it for a moment, then returns to being paper and is tenderly dissolved. I do not hurry. The ink river does not hurry. We lean together into the corridor, where the stories will thin to threads and then weave again into cloth, where a new set of willows may bow and new words may rise from the gloss with their small, generous weight. Behind me, the single drop that began tonight's widening hangs again from a leaf, not falling, only steady, the way a promise steadies when it is kept in the dark. I lift my face toward the bell-shaped glow and let the next breath arrive like a page turned by an unseen hand, ready for a script that continues in silence, ready for the door that draws itself open without a sound. The air tastes of rain that has never fallen. It lingers on the tongue like a memory half-formed, cool and metallic, edged with sweetness that feels older than the mouth that receives it. Each breath carries this taste, as though the world itself has been holding back a storm for centuries, letting its essence seep into the mist instead of releasing it. And through this endless veil stretches a river hidden within silence, a current not meant for waking eyes, flowing in secret where time folds its hands and watches without speaking. The river's surface reflects no sky. Above it, the mist drapes, low, thick as woven cloth, and still the water shows nothing of its veil. Instead, it holds a shifting weave of shadows, drifting shapes that move with the rhythm of unseen tides. They stretch and contract, slow and patient, as if the river were the lung of some vast sleeping thing, drawing in and letting go, carrying fragments of night through the hush. To gaze upon it is to see motion without clarity, meaning without form, a dance that belongs more to feeling than to sight. Along its banks stand statues, worn smooth by centuries of attention. Whatever features they once bore have been given back to time, erased by the patience of the air. Now they are faceless sentinels, their outlines softened into suggestion, their silence a posture that feels deliberate. Each gazes downward, their unseen eyes turned forever toward the current, as though keeping vigil over all that drifts within. Some lean slightly forward, others tilt as if listening, but none are broken. They endure in their stillness, guardians not of stone alone, but of whatever rests in the water's endless passage. Between these figures, pale flowers bloom. They are not rooted in soil, but in silence itself, their stems slipping seamlessly out of the mist-shrouded ground. Their petals glow faintly, with a light more like memory than flame, opening and closing without heed to time. They do not bend to seasons, nor to the rhythm of day and night. Instead, they follow a deeper cadence, blooming and furling to the pulse of the hidden tide. When they open, the air brightens around them, and when they close, the hush deepens, as though breathing were being shared between the flowers and the river. I walk slowly along the bank, and each step carries the sense of entering a chamber where words are not permitted. My footfalls leave no echo, as though the ground itself has chosen to keep the secret of my passage. The statues do not turn, and yet I feel watched, not in judgment, but in remembrance, as though they see not me but the shadow of all who have come before. Each flower I pass opens slightly, a faint widening, its glow brushing against the hem of my presence. It feels like being acknowledged by something that has no need for names. The river stirs. A ripple disturbs the surface, and for a moment, the shadows within take sharper shape. I glimpse a hand reaching upward, not in struggle, but in offering. Then a face, tender but blurred, fading before its expression can settle. Then a door, outlined in light, floating just beneath the surface, as if waiting for someone to lift it open. Each vision dissolves before I can follow, drawn back into the weave of moving dark. The silence absorbs them without sound, holding them in its keeping as it has always done. I pause before one statue taller than the rest. Its arms are folded across a chest smoothed blank, but the posture holds dignity. At its base lies a cluster of the pale flowers, their petals half closed, their glow subdued as if in reverence. I kneel, not knowing why, only knowing that stillness is the right answer here. The taste of rain deepens on the air. My breath steadies until it feels like it belongs to the river rather than myself. For a moment, I am certain the statue leans closer, that its blank face holds the shape of an unspoken blessing. When I rise, again, the flowers have opened wider and the path continues. Further on, the mist parts slightly, revealing a span of the river that widens into a basin. Here, the shadows within swirl more slowly, forming circles upon circles like an eye in meditation. The statues stand farther apart now, their vigil less crowded, their presence more solitary. Between them, the flowers glow more brightly, their rhythm of opening and closing aligned as though the entire field were breathing together. It is a breath that touches not the lungs but the soul, slow, steady, infinite. I step nearer the basin's edge. The surface still holds no reflection of sky, but within its shifting depths I see forms that linger longer than before. A staircase spirals downward, vanishing into blackness. A bell swings slowly, though no hand sets it in motion. A book lies open, its pages turning themselves, though each word vanishes as quickly as it is written. I lean closer, and the silence gathers against my ears, thick and velvet, pressing as if to remind me that to see is not always to understand. The flowers here begin to hum. It is not sound, but vibration, a tone felt more in the skin than the ear. Their glow synchronizes, soft waves of light pulsing outward in ripples that match the unseen tide. The statues seem to lean closer in answer, their posture unchanged, but their presence thickening. I feel as though I have stepped into a ritual older than language, one that repeats endlessly, whether witnessed or not. A shadow, larger than the rest, stirs beneath the basin. It rises slowly, carrying with it fragments of light like stars caught in a net. The form is too vast to grasp, stretching beyond the edges of vision, yet what emerges feels familiar, almost tender. A hand breaks the surface. Not stone, not flesh, but something between, its edges dissolving into mist as soon as they are seen. It hovers above the water, then lowers again, leaving only ripples that widen until they vanish into stillness. The silence deepens once more, and I know I have been permitted only a glimpse. I continue walking. The path curves, leading me back into the embrace of statues and flowers. Each figure is unique in its sameness, each bloom different in its glow. Together, they create a passageway, a corridor of guardianship and light. The taste of rain lingers stronger now, as though the storm that never comes is gathering nearer. My shadow stretches long upon the ground, though no source of light reveals itself. It joins the river's shifting weave, another pattern drifting, into the tide. At last the statues thin, and the flowers grow sparse. The mist thickens, curling into veils that move as though guided by unseen hands. Ahead, the river narrows, its current darkening into a single line of motion. At its farthest reach, through the shroud of fog, a glow begins to form. It is faint at first, but steady, a soft radiance like a lantern held in the hands of someone, waiting just beyond sight. The glow trembles, as if aware of its watcher, as if inviting the journey onward. The statues fade behind me. The flowers close their petals one last time, sealing their light in secrecy. The air still tastes of rain that has never fallen, but now it feels closer, heavier, as though a drop might finally release. The mist folds tighter, drawing me into the corridor of its breath. The river leads forward, unhurried but irresistible, carrying its shadows, carrying its silence, carrying me toward the waiting glow that promises another threshold, another unveiling, another passage deeper into the dream. There is no beginning, only the sensation of drifting, It moves through the body before it finds the ear, a motion without edges, a hush that learns the shape of a pulse, and then slows that pulse to its own unspoiled rhythm. The dark is not empty, it is velvet laid upon the mind, a soft weight that persuades thought to loosen its hands. In that velvet, a murmur threads itself, a thin, lucent ribbon, arriving before sight, before image, before any idea of path. The sound does not introduce itself. It is already known, like a lullaby remembered by the bones when the mouth has forgotten the words. Somewhere inside it, water is gathering its language. The hidden river reveals itself by degrees, as a feeling first. Coolness across the cheeks, a scent of stone after rain, a slight brightening along the edges of things that have not yet decided to appear. Then, softly, the murmur takes on a grain, and I hear what was always there. Liquid memory threading through stillness, syllables smoothed by time until they are more light than tone. The dark thins, and a surface rises without rising, as if thought itself had learned to lie down. In that surface moves a slow gleam, not reflected from above but breathed from within, and the gleam is a current, and the current is a corridor. The river, at last, but not separate from the world around. It is both river and reflection, a line of motion that glides through air as much as water, persuading space to behave like a softer element. I step toward it, and the ground receives me with a paradox that feels kind. It is both solid and fluid. A page. The earth is writing and erasing at once, a substance that holds long enough for balance and then releases the idea of weight into a wider trust. With each step, the silence changes shape. It becomes an architecture, an immense chamber without walls, where breath is permitted the dignity of taking its time. If the earth is dreaming, then it dreams me in, and I am grateful to be included. Where the river passes, a translucence follows, as if the air were glass-cooled just this moment. The current writes faint characters upon that glass, loops, stems, unfamiliar letters, then lifts them away before comprehension hardens their edges. I watch a word nearly become itself, watch it dissolve, feel it return as a pressure behind the sternum rather than a tool of the tongue. This is how remembering proceeds here, not by the grasp, but by the willingness to be touched and to let the touch go. The river's sound gathers a second sound within it, the hush of a lantern that does not burn, the low thread of a bell whose clapper is the listener's heart. I stand long enough that the distinction between standing and being stood upon dissolves. The earth does not hold me up. It rests beneath me, a host old enough to have nothing left to prove. The current turns, and as it turns, dusk and dawn pass, through one another. No sun, no moon, only the gentle rearrangement of grey into pearl, pearl into ash blue into a darkness so complete it glows. I follow. The bank is no bank, merely a persuasion of darker tone along the margin of flow. In places, the river rides over air the way silk rides over the palm. In others, it carves a shallow trough in a ground that answers with the quiet of a library. Statues that are not statues appear at intervals, hollowed silhouettes of presence, shaped from the surrounding hush. Some lean, some incline their heads, some lift invisible faces toward the moving light, their attention a blessing so soft it might be mistaken for weather. Between them, small flowers breathe in slow punctuation. They do not open or close as time commands. They widen when the river remembers something tender and furl when it sets that tenderness down. Sometimes the current lifts above itself in a long curve that holds its form for the span of a breath, then loosens into rain without, falling. Inside that suspended arc, I see the shadows of stairways that lead not up or down but inward, their treads made of a familiar dusk. Doors drift by, their frames faint and exact, their panels made of what has not yet been spoken. Mirrors appear and vanish before they can catch a face. Each artifact is a visitor, and the river receives every visitor without judgment, making room with the gentleness of water the courtesy of sleep. My feet learn the path as if it were a language known before the mouth. The ground lowers when the mind rises, firms when the thought requires an anchor, loosens when a memory asks to pass without snagging. The distances here are honest. A place is as far as the breath that will carry it. I pass beneath an arch of branches that never grew and between pillars of stone that were never quarried. And when I emerge, the world is the same and different. The way the same word spoken twice is never the same sound. The river hums more deeply. Beneath its surface, the current braids with a second current, slower and darker, a spine along which softer waters align. When the gleam thins, that darker braid grows visible, a seam of night carrying its small constellation of unloud stars. They are not the stars above this place. They are wishes remembered by the water. Each time the braid turns, the wishes change. Arrangement. And in that rearrangement, I feel the kind intelligence of what keeps going. Across the drifting air, a corridor forms. 4 pale posts of mist, and between them, a doorway the size of comfort. Within the doorway hangs a curtain made of fine rain. It does not fall, it shivers. I step through. The rain brushes the forearms, with the gratitude of a room made cleaner by an open window. On the other side, the river enters a hall of shallow echoes. The echoes do not repeat the sound. They carry its shape, like hands remembering a bowl after the bowl is put away. The floor of the hall is a slate that has been written on and washed, until the traces of the earlier words make a palimpsest of patience. Bench sits near the water. If bench is the right name for an invitation carved from absence, I rest upon it. The current slows where it passes, spreads, gathers its brightness into a lens, and through that lens, a single image rises. A courtyard, paved with leaves that are not leaves. Small brass bells hung in the mouths of clay jars. A table set for 2 with 1 chair missing. I watch without leaning, allow the image the dignity of finishing itself. And when it fades, a gentleness remains in the ribs. The bench leaves no impression on me. I leave no impression on the bench. That reciprocity is a kind of mercy. In the distance, voices braid themselves into the murmur. They bring with them neither sentence nor message, only the timbre of nearness, the way the throat shapes warmth when a name is spoken without needing to be heard. Some timbres I recognize without memory, an elder's low resonance that makes patience sound like a place, a child's clear filament that draws the moth of attention, a friend's dust-colored vowel shaped by doorways and rain. Each arrives like a small lamp lifted, each passes like a lamp set down, and the corridor grows wide enough for all of them. The ground leans toward water, and I step into it with the quiet of someone entering a chapel alone. The river receives, the legs as if they were instruments it has tuned before, fitting their measure to its cadence, smoothing the cold into a temperature that equals the skin. The current pulls not at the body but at its urgency. It draws out what flickers and asks it to rest. Underfoot, stones arrange their kindness. No sharpness, no surprise. A path that knows where bones have lived. Walking within the river feels less like walking and more like being walked. The way a melody can carry a listener farther than the listener would have walked unaided. We come, river and I, to a bend so gradual it might be called a forgiveness. The air there darkens into an indigo without threat. From the far bank, lanterns appear in a patient line, their light the color of parchment that remembers a hand. No flame burns inside them. They are lit by the thought of being useful. Between lantern and water, a low wall runs, made of smooth stones laid by no one. On the topmost stones sit small bowls of clay filled with silence. Each bowl is perfect. Each bowl would be satisfied to remain empty forever. Still, the river gives itself into them as vapor, so slowly that the giving looks like stillness, and the bowls learn the weight of what cannot be weighed. I leave the current and walk along, the wall, passing bowls that hold the same hush in different shapes. A moth comes, wings the color of unbound books, circles me once, then lands upon the back of my hand with trust enough to quiet the pride of being chosen. I lower my hand to the nearest lantern. Its glass is cool, its light exactly the warmth of a remembered room. The moth lifts and returns to the night it belongs to. Nothing insists on keeping what it loves here. That is why love is plentiful. Beyond the lanterns, the river narrows. Its surface tightens into silk drawn between two fingers. Over it, a footbridge extends. Planks pale and wide, rails carved from driftwood that smells faintly of salt, though. No seer has touched this story. I cross with the slow care of someone refraining from telling a secret. Halfway, I stop. The water below is not water. It is a mirror, too patient to catch small gestures. It waits for the shape that will choose to be seen. A face gathers there, mine and not mine, a compilation of mornings and evenings, the angles softened by the river's refusal to be cruel. The face does not speak. It holds my gaze the way a hand holds a hand when words would spoil the honesty of the moment. When I move again, the mirror chooses not to record the departure. That, too, is mercy. On the far side, a clearing opens, paved with a mosaic of river-smooth stones, set in a pattern I cannot follow, but feel as a rhythm beneath my steps. In the center stands a door that does not stand, a rectangle made of air held firm by attention. Across its threshold hangs a veil woven from mist and pale pollen, each grain a syllable of sleep. The river passes beneath the veil without disturbing a single thread. I draw near and feel the old desire to enter. The desire rises, soft, unurgent, sure. I rest my palm against the air where wood would be, and the door warms to the exact temperature of recognition. Not yet, it seems to say, without saying, not yet, and entirely, yes. So I turn aside and follow the current along the edge of the clearing. The mosaic loosens into a scatter of stones that hum to themselves in a key my chest can match. A stair descends toward the water, not up or down in the ordinary sense, but into a quieter density. I take the stair, and with each step the river's sound clarifies the way fog clarifies into rain without ever becoming heavier. At the bottom, a long table rests in the shallow, its top barely above the surface. Upon it lie objects the river has forgiven. A rustless key that no longer needs to open, a shard of mirror whose silver remembers an eye without ache, a bell-shaped blossom made from frost, complete and unharmed though the air is warm. I pass my fingers over them without lifting a single one. The river appreciates restraint. In return, it softens an old thought until it can be touched without waking. A new wind finds its way through the chamber of night. It does not disturb. The mist, it teaches the mist to sway. Leaves that never grew tremble as if green, and shadows mimic the kindness. The current widens into a room of standing water, where the floor is black glass and the ceiling is the underside of sleep. Here, sound chooses not to echo. It simply enlarges and thins until it becomes light. I hear a name said once by a voice that has no owner. The name belongs to no one I could summon, and yet it loosens the knot behind the breastbone. The knot that keeps time lined and narrow. Untied, time becomes fabric, and the river pleats that fabric into a smaller music the body can wear. When I move on, the world reshapes into a colonnade of slender trees that are not trees but columns of gently falling dust, each one luminous in its descent. Between them, the river walks itself as if it were practicing. Small circles open everywhere, widen with dignity, disappear. In one circle, a childhood room appears so briefly, I only have time to notice a window latch and a ribbon left upon a chair. In another, an old station platform receives evening. In another, two hands hover above a ledger, deciding not to reckon. The circles do not ask to be watched. They cross the surface like blessings that prefer to work unnoticed. The colonnade ends at a basin of stillness, shaped like an eye. The river enters and forgets to leave for a while. At its center, a stone rises, flat and low, perfect for the weight of a single intention. I step upon it, and the surface barely changes. Around me, statues that are not statues take up positions both near and far, like ideas deciding where they wish to stand. In the basin's glass, the sky of this place finally shows itself. Not above, but within, a dark full of small, unwavering sparks. They do not belong to constellations. They belong to pauses, to breaths saved from hurried days and laid gently in water. A bell hangs here too. Thin, transparent, an outline of tone rather than tone itself. When the murmur rises, the bell brightens in sympathy. When the murmur lowers, the bell dims in kindness. I lift my face toward it, and in that posture, I feel something old align with something wider. The words that might have been spoken arrive as light along the cheeks and do not require language. When I step back onto the basin's edge, the river remembers how to travel and carries the eye's patience into its onward flow. What follows is not a path so much as a willingness. The ground thickens with moss the color of moonlit time. Between moss and water, a thin border of sand draws itself and erases itself, a lesson repeated with perfect love. Branches overhead, imagined or true, learn a new way to hold the night, less like a roof, more like a hand open around a flame. Within that held space, the current warms by a degree unmeasured, and the body warms with it, not in heat, but in trust. The drift becomes devotion. Far ahead, where the river narrows to a silver filament, a glow begins. It is nothing like daybreak and everything like permission. The statues thin, the flowers of light furl and rest. The colonnade of dust disperses into a sleep that will remember its shape when asked. I know this glow, though I have never seen it in this way. A door of light arriving from the far side of silence, not to be opened, but to open. It holds steady without conquering the dark. It invites without erasing the journey between. I slow, not from doubt, but from reverence. The ground shifts underfoot to something like pages laid edge to edge. The river hums as if the page were being turned by a wind no one made. I think of the bench, of the bowls, of the lanterns whose flame is consent, of the bridge that chose to forget my reflection. I think of nothing but the kindnesses the river keeps. The kindnesses think of me, in return. When I reach the place where water, air, and glow negotiate their threshold, the current pauses with me. The pause is complete, without demand. It rests upon the heart like a shawl laid by a careful hand. In that pause, the world grows simple. A line of light, a room of dark, the taste of rain held in reserve, a bell that will ring only when listening becomes indistinguishable from hearing. I do not lift a hand to the glow. I do not need to. It comes forward half a breath and stops, as if honoring an old agreement between distance and nearness. Behind me, the river lengthens the night, so the night can hold everything it does not want to drop. Around me, the ground practices being a cloud. Before me, the doorway holds a quiet that might become a path, or a question, or a home. The murmur gathers itself once, twice, a third time, and then loosens into a thread so fine it is almost light. I step into that thread without breaking it, and the glow bends to receive what I bring. The hidden river, which is also reflection, which is also air learning to be water, flows on through me and beyond me, drawing me toward the soft architecture waiting on the other side, where a new chamber of silence will begin to hum, and a new corridor of dreaming will open like the next page turned by the same patient hand. The dream opens, with footsteps echoing in a place without walls. Each step falls into vastness, and yet does not fall away, returning instead as a softened resonance, as though the sound were being received by memory itself. There is no ground, no ceiling, no horizon, only a haze that thickens and thins, shaping corridors without structure, arches without stone, and air that feels older than time. The silence is profound here, but it does not feel vacant. It is the silence of expectation, of a hall holding its breath before the first note of music. From within that haze, the river reveals itself. It does not cut across land as rivers do in waking life. It flows through the very space of memory, threading its current through the unseen marrow of thought. Its waters glimmer faintly, silver and smoke interwoven, carrying strands of light that twist and coil like threads pulled from the fabric of forgotten dreams. The current is slow but certain, a procession without urgency, drawing forward all that it touches. When the surface ripples, it is not from wind, but from recollection, as if every drop holds the pulse of something once felt, now returned in softened form. The banks are not earth. They are made of suggestion, of fragments drifting into place and dissolving again. Here, a staircase rises upward into fog, its steps clean and clear, but as soon as the hand reaches to touch the railing, the whole dissolves into vapor. There, a doorway stands upright with its lintel unbroken, yet it opens into nothing, a frame for emptiness, an invitation without an answer. Further along, windows hover in the haze, each lit from within by a pale glow. For a heartbeat, the glow flickers with warmth, promising a room, a presence, a home. But when approached, it fades, leaving only the coolness of mist. The river gathers these fragments along its passage, carrying them as though they were pages from a book too fragile to hold. I walk beside it, or perhaps within it. It is difficult to know where the border lies. The ground beneath shifts in texture, as if remembering different paths. Stone steps, damp soil, polished wood, worn marble. Each footfall recalls a place once crossed, a place once left behind. The silence is deep, yet it is filled with presence. It is the silence of someone listening, of many listening, though no faces emerge from the haze. The river's strands of light unravel and twist together, like forgotten thoughts trying to braid themselves into meaning. Some coil upward, forming arches that hover for a moment before unraveling into mist. Some sink beneath the current and vanish, as if returning to a depth where only the unseen may read them. The threads seem alive, but not restless. They move, with the patience of time itself, weaving and unweaving without ever finishing. I pause beside a broken colonnade, half buried in the haze. Columns stand without roof or entablature, their surfaces worn smooth, their capitals dissolved. Between them lies a pool of river water that has paused in its flow, as though resting. The pool reflects not the haze, but a series of images that shift each time I glance away. A lantern carried down a narrow hallway, a hand pressing closed, a journal, a voice beginning to sing but never reaching the second note. Each image trembles like a reflection on glass and fades the moment I try to hold it. The pool resumes its flow and carries them away, folding them into the current as if they had always belonged there. Farther along, the staircases multiply. They rise into mist at impossible angles, some spiraling, some straight, some broken halfway. Each promises ascension, yet none reach a destination. The doorways multiply too, some tall and narrow, some wide and squat, their frames etched with patterns that shift as the gaze lingers. They open into nothing, yet that nothing feels weighted, as though behind the veil of absence something waits, patient and unspoken. I move past them slowly, reverently, as though walking through a gallery of unfinished beginnings. The windows appear again, higher now, glowing faintly with their elusive light. One flickers longer than the rest, and for a moment the glow sharpens into a room. A chair turned toward a window, a cup left unfinished on a sill, curtains trembling without wind. The sight draws me closer, and the air thickens with a warmth almost tangible. Yet when I reach out, the light collapses into dust, and the window becomes nothing but haze once more. The silence deepens, but I feel no disappointment. Here, vanishing is not loss. It is simply another form of keeping. The river continues, and I with it. The strands of light drift nearer, brushing against my arms and face, leaving behind faint impressions like remembered touch. They carry with them the echo of voices, a laugh softened into music, a prayer barely whispered, a farewell never spoken, aloud. Each sound dissolves before it fully forms, leaving behind only the resonance, the timbre of closeness without the burden of words. As I walk, the silence changes its texture. It begins to hum, not with sound, but with presence. The haze trembles in waves, as if the air itself were breathing. The statues, the staircases, the doors, the windows, all of them seem to sway in the rhythm of that breath. The river glimmers brighter, its threads of light gathering, weaving together into a single luminous braid that extends far into the distance. I feel it draw me onward, though it never pulls, only invites. The path narrows, the haze thickens, and the fragments of architecture fall away. Only the river remains, flowing steady and sure, its light twisting like silver veins through shadow. I pause at the edge of its bank, watching as shadows lengthen across its surface, reaching outward, stretching far, until they vanish into its depth. The silence holds steady, not oppressive, not vacant, but full of waiting. Ahead, through the haze, a glow emerges. It is faint, like a lantern seen through layers of fog, but steady, unwavering. It does not flicker like the windows, nor vanish like the staircases. It remains. The river bends toward it, guiding its threads of light into the glow. The air tastes of rain not yet fallen, the kind that lingers before a storm. My steps slow, not in reluctance, but in reverence. The silence thickens one last time, pressing gently, tenderly, as though laying a hand across the heart. The river flows on, carrying its threads of forgotten thought into the waiting glow. I follow, each step dissolving behind me, each shadow stretching forward, until all that remains is the luminous braid of current, the profound hush, and the soft invitation of light ahead, where the dream drifts deeper still. The first sensation is of warmth, like a memory returning after centuries of absence. It gathers slowly at the edges of the body, a tide of gentleness that rises without waves, bathing the skin in a light that has not yet chosen a color. It is not heat, it is recognition. A hush spreads through the air, the kind that follows a candle being cupped by careful hands. And in that hush, the breath lengthens, smooth as silk drawn through the fingers of time. The warmth settles in the quiet hollows beneath the ribs, steadies the pulse, and teaches the heart a slower grammar. Only then does the sound arrive, the murmur of water drifting through the silence, a current that is not intent on crossing any distance, only on deepening where it is. The sound clarifies the dark, and the dark reveals itself as softness rather than absence. Lines of pale shadow begin to gather and drift, as if the room of night were choosing furniture from memory. A low horizon, the suggestion of a hill, the gentle slope of a bank that might hold a river if a river decided to be seen. The murmur strengthens, not louder but nearer, like a whisper moving from the doorway to the bedside. The hidden river reveals itself with the delicacy of an eyelid opening. It winds through a landscape half-formed, its surface slow as thought, its brightness the color of unpolished silver. The fields around it sway, though no wind moves them. A silver grass rippling like the scales of a sleeping fish. Each blade glows from its own small memory, as if starlight had learned to grow in rows. I step forward and the ground holds, then releases, then holds again. The way a story works when the listener is trusted. The air carries the coolness of stone that has just given up the heat of day, though no day is visible. On the river, a single ripple forms, makes its way to shore, and unlatches into a ring that opens until it is indistinguishable from the whole. I kneel without thinking. The surface shows no sky, only a depth that looks like felt brushed one way, and then the other, by invisible hands. Beneath that depth, a darker coil moves, a spine of current with a patient purpose. The warmth that began as a returning memory flickers under the skin, as if answering a name. The fields lean toward the river as if they share a vow. The silver grass is tall as the thigh, soft as peacock down, edged with frost that never melts. When I brush a hand across it, the blades part with a sound like many quiet pages being turned at once. Each blade leaves a line of light across the palm, a brief script that vanishes before it can be read. The script is not meant to be held, it is meant to be trusted. I let it go, and the lines dissolve into the air the way lullabies do when the sleeper finally sleeps. The river bends, and the bend reveals a small rise where the grass thins. From that small rise, a stair of barely there stone descends to the water. 4 steps only, each shallow and wide, cut as if by the pressure of many gentle feet, rather than chisel or time. I stand upon the first and feel the shift the way a room feels the shift when someone lays a book closed upon a table. The second step cools the ankle through the length of a remembered summer. On the third I hear, inside the murmur, the faintest strand of song, notes without melody, tone without instrument, the kind of sound a mother leaves folded in a house long after she has stepped outside. The fourth step waits, level with the river's lip, and I wait with it, both of us poised in a kindness that does not require an answer. A bell is present, but not visible. The air knows its curve. Each time the current gathers itself around a hidden bend, the bell's idea brightens, and the warmth within me gathers also. The fields of grass lean and lift in a wave that is not wind, and the wave passes through the bones with the gentleness of forgiveness. I take that as permission and set one foot into the water. The cool is complete and exact, neither bite nor numbness, a temperature held by a hand that knows. The river receives the calf like a sentence that has been waiting for its verb. Across the water, the half-formed landscape sketches and unsketches itself. A long, low wall appears. No mortar, no plan. Just an arrangement of stones that agree with one another. A window lifts from the haze and sets itself atop the wall. A window, without house, a square of glass lit from within by the colour of late winter afternoon. On one side of the river, a stair rises into fog and never returns. On the other side, a door frames nothing but air and makes the air feel chosen. These things are not wrong. They are faithful. They are the way memory arranges its rooms when the body is ready to rest. The warmth spreads behind the eyes. In that warmth, a name gathers. Not spoken, not even syllables. Just the shape of a name that doesn't require mouth or ear. It glows for a moment and is enough. The river bends again, and the fields of silver open into a long lane of low light. The grass lifts its frost and sets it down in a slow tide, the way the chest lifts and sets down the shyest breath. I walk, the lane beside the water, and the water walks me. Our pace is braided, our pauses a single pause. The current thickens slightly, carrying with it thin threads of brightness that tangle and untangle without conflict. They look like loose strands drawn from the hem of the night and rinsed in a basin of dawn. In each strand, a little scene rises and dissolves. A bowl placed on a windowsill to catch snow that will not fall. A watch lying face down on a folded scarf. An open book whose margins are warmer than its words. None of these images ask to be kept. They rest upon the surface the way a moth rests upon a sleeve, lightly, confident that the fabric knows how to carry the moment of their weight. I come to a place where the river spreads into a shallow, the bed visible, a patchwork of stones, smoothed to a language of roundness. The water here is clear enough to hold a mirror without breaking it. If I lean, the mirror offers not a face but an expression, the precise way the mouth rests when the eyes are considering the quiet. I do not correct it. I do not make it mine. I accept the expression on behalf of everyone who has ever looked into a quiet water and seen themselves in the shape of an answer that does not need to be asked. Beyond the shallow, a small island rises. It is no larger than a generous table, covered in moss that glows with a soft tea-green fire. In its center stands a single willow twig, leafless, planted in the moss as if set there by a careful child. From its tip, a clear drop swells, as if the twig were a branch on which a star had paused to become water. The drop grows as I watch, not sagging, not falling, only gathering. When it is exactly the size of a word one whispers in a darkened room, it releases itself and falls into a tiny stone cup set neatly in the moss. The cup receives it without spilling. The warmth in my chest nods, if warmth can nod, and I step on. The fields lean away from the water now, making room for a corridor of standing air. In that corridor, translucent bells hang on invisible cords, spaced at intervals that feel like the length of a promise. They do not ring. Instead, when the river's murmur swells, the bells illuminate from within, the shape of sound without its edge, glowing pearl, then dimming to ash, then pearl again. Between them, a scattering of small doors floats near to the ground, each door as thin as breath, each slightly ajar. None require hand or hinge. Passing them, I feel a tenderness along the forearms, the way skin changes when the body remembers, to trust what it cannot keep. The landscape gathers definition without hardening. A colonnade of slender pillars takes shape along the left bank, carved from the same not-quite stone as the stair. Their capitals are blank and beautiful. On the right bank, a row of sleeping benches waits, their seats just above the waterline, as if meant for feet to rest in the river, while the mind leans elsewhere. I sit at the nearest bench. Beside me, on a flat stone, rests a small clay bowl, empty. Without deciding, I lower my hand into the current and lift it, cupping exactly. Enough water for the bowl to understand it has a purpose. I pour. The water becomes still inside, the surface a little coin of night. The bowl asks for nothing more. I leave it with its coin. The hidden river continues to show me how to move. It turns with patience. Its turns are the shapes of questions, asked by those who do not need an answer tonight. At one turn, a bridge appears. No posts, no arch, only a band of woven light as wide as a palm. I step onto it with the caution you give to good news. The band flexes, holds, and hums, the lowest note I have ever felt. Beneath it, the current compresses into a single, shining seam. In the seam, tiny sparks pass like fish migrating between seasons that have agreed to change places for a while. At the bridge's center, I stop, and the seam stops too, as if to say, we do not have to go on to be going on. When I step off, it resumes, and the note becomes the mended silence once more. Past the bridge, the fields tilt upward into an amphitheater of grass. The river widens at the base, a stage of moving light, and the warmth that has been traveling with me touches the throat as if remembering a song. The amphitheater seats are terraces of earth with edges bound by roots. On each terrace, a small lantern sits upon a stone, not lit, yet not dark either, as if containing the cupped remainder of many evenings. I climb to the third terrace and sit with the lantern that matches my breath. When I lift its lid, the air inside is the exact temperature of a hand that once was held and is held again in memory. I set the lid back and do not disturb what remains. The river's voice changes, not louder, rounder. It carries the note of a room where someone is reading softly to someone who has already fallen asleep. Words float, not to be kept, but to braid a quieter air. A tenderness moves along the amphitheater that is not coming from me and not going to me. It is simply here, and being near it is like standing in a doorway and watching rain fall in a garden you do not need to own. Little by little, the silver grass lowers its heads, and the blade's frost becomes dew that refuses to chill the ankles. I descend and rejoin the bank. The warmth tucks itself deeper into the chest, a lamp with its shade drawn. The half-formed architecture returns, not broken now, only unhurried. A window floats by, lit with a steady yellow. Within it, a kettle steams with no heat source, and a pair of cups waits on a tray carved from quiet. A door passes, and for a breath I see through it. A corridor lined with bells that do not ring and yet fill the air with the shape of ringing. A staircase appears, its banister wrapped in a ribbon the color of evening's first star. It rises 3 steps and stops, not incomplete, merely sufficient. I step where the staircase would ask, And though there are no more steps, I am somehow higher, looking down at the river as if at a long letter written to the future in a hand I recognize without jealousy. From here, the current is a silver script, crossing a page of dusk. Where the pen hesitates, an eddy forms. Where the hand grows certain, the line gleams brighter. The fields of grass are the margins, generous and clean, keeping the text from running to the edges. The islands are commas, the bridges gentle conjunctions, the bowls and benches quiet parentheses that hold aside what should not be hurried into, the sentence. When I return to the level of the water, a fog draws near, thin as a breath across glass, thread-like, benevolent. The warmth leans into it, and the fog leans back. We walk together, the river, the fog, the warmth, and I, through a corridor that smells faintly of stone washed many times by hands that did not wish to stain it with grief. On the far side, the landscape opens again, but not wide, just enough for a new kind of soft. Here the grass is shorter, and the ground slopes toward another stair, this one descending into a basin where the river rests briefly as a circular lake. The lake is black satin, too smooth for stars. It holds their possibility rather than their points. Around its rim, small mirrors are staked like low flowers, their faces tilted at different angles, catching the moving sheen and returning it as tiny moons. I kneel by one and see, not my features, but the posture of my attention, a tilt I once had as a child when listening for a distant cart on a rainy lane. Another mirror shows the stillness I carried when waiting under a railway eave for someone who did not come until the next season. These mirrors are not for judgment, they are for tenderness. I move from one to the next, learning how many ways a person can be quiet without being empty. When the basin releases the river, it does so as a mother lets go of a child's hand, at the threshold of a classroom. Reluctant only for a grace-filled instant, then proud. The current narrows to a lucid stream that glides beneath a low arch of stone. The arch is worn smooth by the passage of what cannot scuff stone. Time, light, attention. A faint seam of brighter silver runs along its inner curve, the way a vein shows through the skin of a wrist. Passing under, I feel the warmth in my chest pass under too. And when we emerge, the air has changed by a single degree of kindness. Ahead, a glow forms of the kind that does not ask the dark to leave. It builds from within the mist, an oculus of patient light, as if someone were holding a lantern behind a thin veil and smiling with their eyes. The fields of silver grass settle, their ripples smoothing into a calm that looks like breath at rest. The river aligns itself with the glow, neither hastening nor slowing, just becoming more certain the way a sentence does when it has found the word that allows it to end without ending anything. I think, for the first time tonight, of what might come next, not as a plan, only as a willingness. The warmth that began as a returning memory takes a seat in the most interior chair. It does not tell me to go. It does not tell me to stay. It wraps the bones in a low light and listens for how the feet choose. The bells that were only ideas along the corridor hum a soft ascent inside the blood. The half rooms and almost doors, and unstairs, gather behind me in a loose procession, the way evening gathers behind a walker who has chosen a path that leads to sleep. The glow ahead clarifies into a door of light. It has no knob, no hinge, no seam. It opens by being looked at with gentleness. The river glides toward it as though greeting a familiar friend at the end of a familiar street. The fields lean in, the silver grass still as an audience at the instant before the music begins again. I stand at the bank and then step into the shallows until the water palms my knees, my thighs, my waist, as if measuring where to carry me and choosing here. The first sensation was warmth. It is warmth again now, but larger, room warmth, home warmth, the warmth of a lamp seen through a winter window, just as the snow decides not to fall after all. The door of light brightens a fraction, the exact fraction required for trust to complete its circle. I draw one breath that tastes faintly of rain undone, and the river lifts me, almost without lifting, almost without motion, just enough that the edges of the body widen by the width of forgiveness. The glow holds steady, waiting without waiting, and the current bears me toward it, like a sentence escorted to the page's end by a patient hand. I do not hurry. The river does not hurry. The light needs neither rescue nor consent. The fields recall their tide and fold it into the hush. The bells outline the tone of a future note. The mirrors along the basin lower their faces like flowers at night. The small clay bowl on the bench behind me holds its coin of sky, and will hold it until morning remembers how to be kind. When I draw near, the door does not open. It continues to be open. The glow does not brighten. It continues to be bright enough. The river enters as if finishing a sentence that never wanted a period, only a softer line break. I cross with it, and the warmth that began like a century's late memory escorts me through the veil, laying its palm along the heart as if pressing a page flat. On the other side, wherever that is, another corridor begins to shape itself out of stillness, and the sound of water changes by the smallest imaginable degree, as if it has learned a new word for the same devotion. Behind, the silver grasses sway without wind, their frost becoming dew the way names become sleep when they are no longer needed. Ahead, the light waits like a question that understands its answer is not an answer at all, only an invitation to go on. And we do. River, warmth, breath, and quiet. The procession of a night that unrolls its story until the listener forgets where listening ends and dreaming begins. Mist curls like breath across a mirror, soft and uncertain, as if the air itself were exhaling a memory it has held too long. From within that mist, the hidden river emerges, not in a sudden arrival, but in a slow revealing, as though it has always been here, waiting for the eye to notice. Its surface is liquid silence, a sheen of stillness stretched wide across the unseen, glowing faintly with hidden currents. They move like veins beneath skin, pulsing gently, never hurried, carrying with them the quiet insistence of time itself. The first ripple forms without cause, expanding outward in circles that dissolve as soon as they reach the mist. In its wake comes sound, so faint it is less heard than remembered. A bell tolls from a distance too vast to measure, its tone thinned by centuries, yet intact enough to stir the bones. Another ripple follows, and from it rises the echo of a lullaby, soft, as if sung behind a closed door, the words too blurred to catch, the melody trailing into silence before the ear can fully hold it. A third ripple carries the sigh of wind moving through forgotten halls, grand chambers emptied of their voices, corridors where footsteps once spoke, but now return only as whispers in stone. The river breathes with these fragments, inhaling silence, exhaling memory. Each pulse along its surface is both reminder and release, carrying what has been left behind, offering it gently to the one who listens. To gaze upon it is to see more than water. It is to see memory liquefied, time itself laid bare in a current that does not rush forward, but flows inward, spiraling deeper into itself, gathering all that once was and all that will never be again. I walk along its bank, if bank it can be called. The ground is less earth than suggestion, its edges shifting with each step. At times it feels solid, moss soft beneath the soles, and at other times it seems to dissolve, leaving only the sensation of standing on breath, on something that holds because it chooses to. The mist drifts low and slow, wrapping around the ankles, curling upward to the chest, rising until the horizon is erased. The only direction is the river, and the river is enough. The light here is not light at all, but a glow emanating from within the water. It spills upward in veins of silver and pale blue, folding shadows into shapes that seem almost human. Faces flicker for a moment and dissolve. Hands reach upward, blurred and soft, as if pressing against the underside of a dream. The river does not keep them. It releases each one back into the current. The way memory lets go when holding becomes too heavy. A sound rises from the depths, a chorus too faint to identify, as though all the voices once carried here still hum beneath the water. They are not speaking, not singing, simply existing as tone, a harmony without melody. I lean closer, and for an instant I hear a name that may have once been mine. It slips away before recognition can close its hand. The river has no interest in ownership. It teaches through dissolving, through allowing. Along the bank stand fragments of architecture, not solid buildings, but impressions of what once was. A staircase leans out of the mist, half-formed, its steps shimmering like glass, leading upward until it vanishes. I place my foot upon the first step, and it holds. The second step quivers beneath me, and on the third, the whole dissolves into vapor. I stand in air and am set gently back upon the bank, as though the river itself had carried me down. The staircase reforms behind me, as if it had never been touched. Nothing here breaks. Everything simply returns. Further on, I pass a doorway, standing alone, its frame carved of light, its threshold opening into nothing but mist. For a moment, a faint glow appears within it, as if a room exists just beyond, lit by the steady flame of a single candle. When I draw nearer, the light fades, and the doorway empties into absence once more. I feel no disappointment. Even absence is sacred here. Even vanishing has meaning. The ripples on the river shift again, and a sound rises clearer now. A lullaby carried in fragments. A woman's voice, low and tender, humming more than singing. The melody circling like a cradle being rocked. The words are missing, dissolved by distance, but the tone remains, a mother's vow etched into air long after lips have ceased to move. The melody hovers above the water, then lowers, sinking into the depths, until only silence remains. The silence holds the shape of the song, and I carry that shape as I walk. The mist thickens, curling across the river, obscuring its surface until only the faint glow beneath pulses through. In that glow, I see movement, a procession of shadows, drifting slowly downstream. They are not solid, not figures of flesh, but outlines drawn in light and filled with memory. Some walk with bowed heads, some carry objects I cannot identify, some drift with arms extended as though reaching for something, just beyond. They make no sound, no ripple, but the current bends around them as if honoring their passage. The statuesque silhouettes vanish into the fog, leaving only the pulsing glow of the water behind. I pause where the river bends, and there I find a pool widening from the current. Its surface is still, a mirror waiting for what will not arrive. I look into it, and at first I see nothing but mist. Then, slowly, shapes gather, not reflections of myself, but moments that cling to the water's skin. A lantern hung upon a nail, its flame unlit. A book lying open upon a table, its pages blank but heavy with meaning. A chair pulled slightly away from a desk, as though someone had just risen and left. The pool releases these visions one by one, its ripples absorbing them until the water stills again. The silence here is profound, but it is not empty. It is a silence that hums, that listens, that carries weight. It presses gently against the body, reminding me that stillness is not absence, but presence in its purest form. Every sound the river carries, a bell, a lullaby, a sigh, is a reminder of this presence. Even the echoes that dissolve remain alive within the silence, folded into its breath. I walk again, and the mist parts slightly. On the far bank, a row of pale flowers blooms, their petals glowing faintly like fragments of moonlight scattered across the earth. They open and close without rhythm, responding to some unseen tide within the river. Each time a petal opens, the air brightens slightly, and when it closes, the hush deepens. They are not alive as flowers are in waking life. They are alive as memories are, shifting between being seen and being lost, always here, always vanishing. The current narrows as I follow it, the glow beneath sharpening into a single vein of light. It runs straight ahead into the mist, drawing the eye toward what cannot yet be seen. The silence grows thicker, not heavy but anticipatory, as if the world itself is holding its breath. The warmth of the river's glow gathers in my chest, and I feel the pull of the current, gentle but certain, leading forward into the unknown. Mist curls closer, wrapping itself into veils that shimmer with hidden light. The sound of the river softens until it is no longer outside but within, threading through the heart like a second pulse. Each step feels less like walking and more like drifting, as though the ground itself has joined the current. The fragments of sound, the bells, the lullaby, the sigh, linger in the air, blending into a hum that belongs to silence itself. Ahead, through the veils, a light begins to form. It is not sudden, not piercing, but steady, the way dawn spreads through the edges of clouds. The river bends toward it, the glow of its depths flowing into the waiting brightness. The mist parts in ribbons, the air thick with reverence, and I feel the silence lift, as if making room for something greater. The hidden river carries me forward, its surface glowing with the fragments it has gathered, each ripple a story dissolving into light. I follow, unhurried, each step surrendering to the current's gentle persuasion. The glow ahead grows nearer, softer, more certain, and the mist folds itself aside. The silence hums once more, low and deep, and the river flows onward, into the waiting brightness that opens like a veil, beckoning the dream further still.